Children, you are already aware that today we are going to start with a wonderful short story by O. Henry. We have already known who O. Henry is. I had shared a YouTube link before this. And just like all the O. Henry stories, this story also is famous for its wonderful twist or ending. So let us now commence with the story itself. The story opens on a night. It is about 10 p.m. at night. We think that it is a business district where the setting is because there are a number of shops in this area. Now, that particular night, when the story is set, it is a chilly night and there is probably a little bit of drizzle also. So, the chances are that there would be a strong drizzle or rain ensuing. Hence, the night was chilly, gusts of wind were blowing, but that did not deter one of our main characters, the policeman, to do his duty. The policeman on duty was present there as usual. He was an impressive man, he was tall, and he was doing his duty like he would do every single day. Sometimes he would be taking his stick and he would be beating it or just lightly tapping it on the closed doors just to figure out that okay, the doors are closed, things are secure, no one is trapped inside. And as the text goes, he went trying doors. He was twirling his club. So he was carrying a stick and he was just moving it round and round, twirling it, probably just a habitual amusement. And he was turning now and then to cast his watchful eye down the thoroughfare, that is, the little bit of people who were still remaining on the streets because most of them had gone home since it was a chilly, rainy night. So whoever was watching, so he was keeping an eye, a watch out for the people on the street as well. So as he was proceeding, sometimes he was looking back just to make sure that everything was all right on the street as well. The officer with his stalwart form and slight swagger made a fine picture of a guardian of peace. So, when you have an officer like this who is very upright and who has a strong physique, people tend to put their faith on these kind of people that yes, my life is secure in the hands of such a person. He will be able to take care of me. But you see, the officer did not do all this to impress anyone. It was very, very characteristic of him. He was habituated to doing all this. So he did not bother. He was not doing it purposefully just to impress anyone. So he was just doing his usual duty as he did every night. Now, as he went walking, he saw that there was a man standing in front of a hardware store. The hardware store was closed. It was already 10 o'clock. No hardware shop generally is open at that point of time. Moreover, most of the people had left because of the weather. But why was this man just standing here? He was definitely standing here. He was not waiting to cross the road or something like that. It triggered an interest in the policeman, and of course, he wanted to know why the stranger was standing at that point of that place. As the policeman approached, he saw that the stranger himself initiated a conversation with the policeman. Generally, what we do is that when we see a policeman, we make an eye contact, we probably nod our head, but we generally don't go about speaking to policemen right on our own. But the stranger behaved in a unique fashion. So he just went on talking. As the policeman walked up to him, the man spoke up quickly. This I am reading from your text. "It's all right, officer," he said reassuringly. "I am just waiting for a friend." So, if we take it from the perspective of the person who is standing there, we can also justify his action. He knew he was standing there. He might have raised a lot of questions. So, before the policeman could start with his routine interrogation, he told the policeman himself that it's all right. I'm not here for some fishy business. I'm actually here waiting for a friend. And then he revealed something very, very interesting. He said that he is waiting for a friend, and the appointment with that friend was made 20 years ago. Now, obviously, that would trigger a lot of interest in anyone who is listening. So he goes on to say that though it sounds a little funny, I'll explain. You deserve an explanation that 20 years ago, two people making an appointment to meet here. All right. So you see that this place where I'm standing right now, though this is a hardware store now, it used to be a restaurant. And the name of the restaurant was Big Joe Brady's Restaurant. Immediately, the policeman quips, "Yes, until 5 years ago. It was torn down then." Which means that the policeman had been serving this place for quite a few years, or he would not have known that this present place, which was a hardware store, used to be Big Joe Brady's Restaurant. So both of them were aware of the fact that this was previously occupied by a restaurant which was torn down, and later on a hardware store was set up in the place. As the two men conversed, the one who was waiting for his friend, he lit a cigar. And he continued, and he went on saying that the name of his friend who he was waiting for was Jimmy Wells. He also gave some more information to the policeman and said that both Jimmy and himself, they were raised in New York. They were so close to each other that they were as if two brothers. Jimmy was 2 years older, because if you read your text, page 126, the last paragraph, he says that I was 18 and Jimmy was 20. And why did they have to part? Because this person, he was a bit of a risk taker. So if we compare the two characters of Jimmy Wells and the speaker, we can see that Jimmy was 2 years older to him, and also he was a person who wanted a conservative life. He was not a risk taker like his friend. This one, on the other hand, was a risk taker. He wanted to go to the west. New York, we know, is in the east coast of the United States of America, and on the west coast, we might say California and those other places. So these are on the west coast. So at one point of time, there was a gold rush and people rushed to the west in order to make their fortune. But obviously, fortune favors the brave. So people had to take risks over there. They had to compete with other people who had the same motto of going to the west. So this fellow who was waiting for his friend and smoking the cigar, he decided to take the risk, and he had decided to seek his fortune in the west. But Jimmy stayed on in New York. But since they were such good friends, they agreed that night that they would meet there at this particular place, at Big Joe Brady's, because they did not know that the restaurant would cease to exist. They would meet there again. Now this portion is important. 20 years from that date and time, no matter what their conditions were. Now, just here we can see that as this person lit the cigar, it revealed the face. To the policeman, it revealed the face of a man. The face was pale and squarish in structure. The eyes were keen, obviously. If he is an intelligent man who had been to the west, made his fortune, His eyes would be intelligent and keen, and there was a scar near his right eyebrow. The fact that this man had made a good fortune in the West was proven by the fact that there was a large diamond, oddly set though, because probably he was not very much into the style and what was in vogue at that point of time. It was set on his scarf. So that meant that he had been quite fortunate in his ventures in the West. Now, so as I was saying, what was very important was, they had agreed to meet that night exactly 20 years from that date and time that they had fixed at Big Joe Brady's. And they would meet no matter what happened, no matter what their conditions were, and no matter from which part of the world they would have to come, how much of a distance they would have to traverse. The two men would definitely come and meet. They had given themselves 20 years, and they knew that this was time enough for the men to have decided that what they would be following or doing in their professional lives. So he's saying that we figured that in 20 years each of us ought to have our destiny worked out, that I'll be here in the West, Jimmy making his fortune in New York, and whatever they were going to be, they would definitely meet at that particular place and time. Now, as he went on talking, the man started to have a look at his watch. The time to meet was 10 o'clock, and now it was nearly 3 minutes to 10. So to kill time, the speaker, he revealed that he had been very successful in his ventures in the West. He said that the West was a pretty big proposition, obviously a lot of scope, and he kept hustling around. So he did not just go the conventional way. He tapped this opportunity and that, and finally he made it quite big. He struck fortune, something worked out for him, and he is now a rich man. As he was speaking, it kind of suggested that he was very proud of himself. Though he loved Jimmy, in some portions of his conversation, it could be figured that he did not have much faith in Jimmy, because he called Jimmy a plodder, and he said that he was very conventional in doing his work and probably he would not have done half as well. But then he quickly brushes that attitude off, and he said that his staunchest buddy would definitely show up if he was alive. But since Jimmy had still not arrived, he went on talking to the policeman, and now the policeman, he had obviously some duty to perform. He also wanted to be up and about on his way ahead. So the last thing that they spoke about was that Jimmy, with a mindset to pursue a conventional job, might not have done half as well as this man who was smoking an expensive cigar, had a diamond in his tie-pin, etc. And how, again, this man comes back to talking about himself. He says that he had to compete with some of the sharpest minds, the most intelligent people, and he had to beat them in his way to make his mark in the West. In fact, he said that the West had put a razor's edge on him. By now, the policeman had had a long conversation with him, and he said goodbye and was on his way now to his pursuing his duties. So the conversation ended when the policeman bid the stranger adieu. The policeman was assured that this friend would give his friend Jimmy Wells a window of about half an hour, because you see that on page number 127 he asks, more or less at the middle of the page, that the policeman asked that, are you going to call time on him sharp? which means that if it is 10 o'clock that you two were supposed to meet, are you going to give him 10 o'clock only, and maybe after 5 minutes are you going to move ahead? So this other friend, the one who is waiting, he says, no, I will give him half an hour more, because I don't know which part of the world he is coming from. But he was very, very confident about his friend that he would definitely show up if he was alive. So children, we stop here with a lingering thought in our minds. Can you see the level of friendship that these two people had? Even after 20 years, the bond that the two shared is extremely close. So, I would leave you here thinking, do you think you have a friend in your life who you can feel about in the same way if you had not met or communicated even via letters, email, WhatsApp, whatever, for 20 years? Let's think. Let's give friendship a thought, a big place in our minds today. Let's think of the value of friendship.